down a little bit so it ain't so noisy. So, you know, when I came out of the army, for those who don't know, I went into the army at 15 and a half to be exact, and I celebrated my birthday, 16th birthday, as a band boy soldier in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, which at the time was stationed in Berlin. And that was a big enough adventure. I later was transferred. I didn't spend much time in Berlin. I guess they thought that I would learn a little bit more in a boys' school in Aberdeen, so I was sent to Aberdeen and spent about a year in Aberdeen. I gotta say that I pretty much hated the army. It really didn't suit my character. Somebody, a subscriber, once said that I had issues with authority, and he didn't realize he was understating the problem. But anyway, I found that it just I found it stifling, and that wasn't good for me. And yet I have to thank the army for teaching me music, and I did get a lot of tuition when I was in the army, so it was really good. When I came out, I went to London. Now that's when I found that the freedom of being a civilian was really good. The army left me in, what can I say? It left me down. I didn't exactly blossom. However I grew up in the army was in spite of the way that I lived. But I came out, and the first job I had was in a comedy band, and I went to Great Yarmouth. And after Great Yarmouth, I came back and I went to live in London. I had a friend there who had been in the army with me, and his roommate was leaving, and the timing was perfect. So I moved into an apartment with a bedsit, a large bedsit in the basement of a house in Fieldbeach Gardens, for those who maybe know Earl's Court. Earl's Court was very big for people who were visiting London, especially Aussies. Aussies loved to go and live in Earl's Court. But anyway, I did a stint with the Bertram Mills Circus, which I actually loved. Musically, of course, it was crap because I was playing in the band, but for 17, I think it was 17 weeks, quite a long season at the Olympia. The old Olympia is now gone. Not sure what's happened now, but that was it was quite good because it was a short walk from where I lived in Fieldbeach Gardens. So after that, I got jobs in clubs, and I didn't get a chance to sing very much, but I decided that I was going to go and get lessons. And I'd read a book by an Aussie, a man who actually was quite a teacher. He wrote a book. Arnold Rose was his name. He wrote a book called The Singer and the Voice, which I bought, and then I discovered that I could actually go to him for lessons. Wow, I thought that was incredible. He was a rough old devil, I can tell you. He had a nice apartment, not beautiful, but a nice apartment on the other side of the Thames, and I used to go there. He had a big grand piano, which I swear he couldn't play. he used to plonk the notes out, bong, bong, and I would go, bong, ba da da dee da da da, bong, bong, ba da da dee da da da. Stereotypical teaching of that. But the exciting parts about being in London was that this was the 60s. I came out of the army in the 60s, and like everything was happening there. I've told that story already about I went to work in the Pigalle, and I didn't know it at the time, but the Pigalle was a big restaurant come theatre, and it was huge. Now I remember that I went for the audition, and they liked my playing, and I called the guy up as arranged, and he said, well, it's a toss-up between you and another trombone player. Ah, really? I'd always wanted to sing, so and you know that thing about you got to take a chance, you know, so I'd at that point I hadn't actually been to the Pigalle. I'm not quite sure how I did the audition without seeing the place, but I did the audition, and so they knew what my playing was like. So I said, do you have a singer in the band? No, we don't. I said, well, I sing. I could do a couple of numbers, you know, if that would help. Well, actually, that would make a big difference. So I got the job. So, having landed myself with the responsibility to sing, then I had to really pull stops out. But anyway, the whole thing about being in London at that time was that there was no disco, there was no discotheque. The whole of the country was served by Mecca, a group called Mecca. And Mecca did some, I think that Mecca was responsible for one of the big beauty contests, something like Miss Universe or Miss World, it may have been at the time. So anyway, I went to work there and I enjoyed the life in London. Well, at that time, London was all about all of the things which have now become iconic. The King's Road, where people went, and you walked up and down the King's Road, and it had all these image stores. The women were wearing miniskirts and thigh-length boots, and it was an exciting time. Well, there was also Carnaby Street. In Carnaby Street, you went to get clothes made. So I remember going, there was one particular place where you went, and all of the famous groups used to go to this guy who was quite a quirky character in Carnaby Street. I remember I went there and there was another group. I didn't know them at the time because I wasn't into pop music. I was really wanted to play jazz, which, depending on your viewpoint, I was good at or okay. I was a good player, but jazz required a lot more focus and practice. But anyway, I went to work at the Pigalle, and during that time I was very interested in a lot of different kinds of singers. The Pigalle actually at one time had a stint by Peggy Lee. Peggy Lee was a huge American star, and they had a lot of people like that there. Well, so the kind of thing that I was listening to back then, I wasn't so interested in lyrics because I was a trombone player and much more interested in what was instrumental. So I remember that I went for my first lesson with Arnold Rose, and he asked me to sing something, And I said, well, I don't know any songs. And he gave me the biggest rollicking ever. You're wasting my time. Come here and you don't know any songs and you want to learn how to sing? Anyway, I managed to crank out Autumn Leaves, and that kept him happy enough to take me on another lesson. And over the years I went back and forth to Arnold Rose quite a bit, and he did teach me a lot. But I was really interested, I was interested in classical, but not as a player, but just as a listener. And I used to listen to the Planet Suite and some Stravinsky, and you know, some. It was quite bizarre to be interested in that, and yet want to play jazz. But that was the way it was. But one of the people that I listened to and loved because his songs were so different, and that's really what I wanted to talk about, even though I've waffled on about something else, which is unusual for me, of course. And that was on Oscar Brown Jr. Oscar Brown Jr. was a black, I should, if I want to be politically correct, I would have to call him an African American, which I always thought was a load of BS, you know. People are what they are, you know. I guess I'm a bit of a mongrel, a mix of Irish and English. All my family were Irish, but I think my father was first generation in England, but going back further than that, they were all Irish. And then heaven knows after that what a DNA sample would tell you. But one of the album that I had of Oscar Brown Jr. Had really interesting songs. They were fun, and it told a terrific story so eloquently. And when you're a singer, there are songs which you have to sing because everybody loves them, like My Way. I Did It My Way. Everybody loved that song. It was such a big hit, and yet yes, it was a good song to sing, but not a great song to sing. Oscar Brown Jr. wrote and performed great songs to sing. Listen to this one. It's called Mr. Kicks, and the words at that time I would describe as being hip. Things were hip back then, and the musicians would use the word swinging. It's wow, it really swings. That was that description, little catchphrase, was stolen from musicians by a comedian called, I think it was Norman Vaughan. Not so good on names. I'm not so good on names even now. But anyway, this particular song was a real mover. So hold on. Now, of course, I can't make any great claims to being a singer now, because you can't. I'm 83 years old. I'm realistic, but I can get the words over to you, and that's my interest in this particular kind of video, because it's about some of my favourite songs. My favourite songs are the ones that were fun for me to sing, and even though you've done me no harm, I'll let you listen to this one. Permit me to introduce myself. The name is Mr. Kicks. I dwell in the dark dominions way down by the river Styx. The devil has got me here because I'm full of wicked tricks, and I'm such a popular fella among all you lunatics. I teach a course in ruination from the devil's text to fools who can't withstand temptation. Step right up, you're next. I dwell in the dark dominions way down by the river Styx. Permit me to introduce myself. The name is Mr. Kicks. Shady lady and her lover operating undercover. She knows sin and virtue don't mix. Her mama raised her prim and proper. Now wild horses couldn't stop her. When she's on the manhunt for kicks, looking for kicks, looking for kicks. I dwell in dark dominions way down by the river Styx. Permit me to introduce myself. The name is Mr. Name is Mr. Kicks. So, all the time that you're singing on this stuff, you have to have what I call an inner metronome, and that is you have to have a sense of rhythm. You can have professional musicians at the Mecca stage, where Mecca had ballrooms all over England, and they employed hundreds, thousands of musicians. This is where you went when you first started to play and became proficient enough to be professional. You had to be able to read, and you had to be able to stand there and perform and look fairly presentable, I would say. So you would go into a band on Mecca, and that would provide you with enough of a living to be able to buy a house and support a family. And for some years I actually did that. But the clubs was where unusual things were done. I remember when I was actually in the army, I actually played with another trombone player, and we did the music of JJ Johnson and Kay Winding, and JJ became my hero. He was the ultimate, for me, the ultimate player, and still is. Like a lot of musicians, I believe he took his own life. JJ was the inspiration of, I would say, possibly 1 million or more players, because he was impossible. It was impossible to copy almost. They used to transcribe his solos. They were difficult, and he played them so beautifully. But anyway, sadly, I only learned about his demise some later. But I loved to play his music. In among all of this, you've got really great songs, which I learned to love later. I used to sing this song in a club that I went to in Fort Myers, a very poignant song called I Have Dreamed. And this is where the beauty of words really comes in, that these writers were just so full of the ability and the heart and soul to be able to express things so incredibly. And this one is called I Have Dreamed. I have dreamed that your arms are lovely. I have dreamed what a joy you'll be. I have dreamed every word you'll whisper when you're close to me. How you'd look in the glow of evening. I have dreamed and enjoy the view. In these dreams I've loved you so that by now I think I know what it's like to be loved by you. I would love being apologise for some of the little shakes there because we're going over some dodgy Filipino rubs. That's the truth. So beautiful songs like that I actually loved, and my hero as a singer became Mel Torme. Mel Torme just broke your heart with the way that he sang and the way that he produced every note. The other singer that I listened to a great deal was Barbra Streisand. Barbra Streisand, I remember Marvin Hamlish, the piano player and composer, said of her that when they'd been in the studio all day long and everybody was completely knackered, it was always Barbra that said, let's do it another time, I think it can be better. She was the one that just wrung everything out of every word and every note possible. So that, and of course the male singer of Mel Torme. Mel Torme would have been Frank Sinatra if he was cute. He would have been a better Frank Sinatra than Frank Sinatra, because he was an incredible singer. He had perfect pitch. Perfect pitch is not only do you sing the note, but you know what the note is. You can start singing in any given key and the band can follow and you'll be right. Whereas of course that's not the case with other singers. Other singers have what is called relative pitch, and relative pitch is where, given a note, you'll be able to sing in that key and sing beautifully in that key. People like Frank Sinatra would have had very good relative pitch. Not sure about Barbra Streisand, but I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't have perfect pitch. So all of this, you had all of these great singers, and I would go in and ask for a certain singer. I remember going in and I asked for Mel Torme, and the guy that worked in the music store said, well, you know, there are other people that you could listen to. And I began to listen to other people, began to listen to quite a few black singers from America. That's when America became the dream place. So I understand when Filipinos dream of America. America is the place to dream of. The musicians, the singers from America. When you go from America, it is a dream place. It's a paradise. It's the place where you would go to be with your idols. I remember a friend of mine that went there, my friend Shay. He went on the boats. They used to have boats that went from I think it was Dover to New York and back again as a cruise. And you could go and see. You could take a while, and you could go to New York. And he played in the bands on that, and he went to New York. And when he got to New York, he called up three kids on a bike. He called up the Musicians Union. He called up the Musicians Union and he asked for the number, as if he were going to book him. He asked for the number of Frank Rossellino. Frank Rossellino was an incredible player, one of the icons of the trombone world, if you will. And he called up. I mean, this was like, for me, was if I'd dreamed of calling J.J. Johnson, it would have been like a direct line to heaven, and it would have been almost like speaking to God. he was the god of trombone playing for me. He called out Frank Rossellino, and he said, "Mr. Rossellino, almost brings me to tears to think that this could happen." He said, "Mr. Rossellino, I've come from England, and I'm an Irishman, and I just wanted to know if there was anywhere that I could go and hear you play." And Frank Rossellino, you've got to understand how big this guy was. He said, "Well, I'm doing a session, and it's on at 2 o'clock. I'm filling in the details here. It's on at 2 o'clock. Why don't you come along? It's on 2nd Street or whenever it was." And he gave him the address of this studio, and my friend went and met him, and he actually listened in on a recording studio with Frank Rossellino. An unbelievable thing. When he got back, he wrote to Frank and said, "Thank you so much." Frank wrote back to him a letter, a real letter that your grandparents may have written so long ago. And he said to him, "Shay, what a pleasure it was to meet you, and if ever you're in New York again, do give me a call." A letter from heaven. And now I'm where I am supposed to be, at Taffy Police Station, and I'll stop talking to myself, which is how it must look. Bye for now.